I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Johnny Smith.
And this is On the Other Side of Things, the Smith & Sniff spin-off in which we answer your questions. Yes, another Otosot for a Friday. And we start with a question from Matt Baker, presumably not the one off the One Show.
No, he wouldn't have anything interesting to say.
Well, he's an affable man. Anyway, it's not that, Matt. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Either way, hello, Matt. And thanks for your question, which is, well, he says, Brian Harvey, George Michael, and my brother have all fallen out of cars. My brother, in the 70s, when he was about 2.5, rolled out of the door of my mum's Morris Minor Traveller on a large motorway exit type roundabout.
No way.
Yeah. It was the 70s. Different times.
Different times.
So she just drove around the roundabout again and scooped him up. Oh. Apparently his nappy saved him.
Oh, my gosh.
That's nuts.
That's so 70s.
I know, just go back round the roundabout. Oh, no, right, come on, let's go back around and get him.
Probably no panic at all.
Matt's question is actually, have you guys ever had any motoring-related injuries?
Well, yeah. I've
never fallen out of a car.
I've fallen out of a car. Well, I told you about the time when I was filming a TV show for BBC America, and I was on this stupid frame buggy thing that we'd built, and we were posing for some pictures, some still pictures, and the guy had it running while we were posing for these pictures. One of the contestants was in the driver's seat. I was stood on the back of the car, leaning on the roll cage. And I think he had it in first gear with his foot right down on the clutch for these pictures, and then just forgot that his foot was on the clutch, and then just took his foot off. And the car jerked so violently and then stalled, but it banged me on one of my hips.
Ow!
It banged so hard that I had to go and lie down. I nearly cried, but there were a couple of attractive women there, so I didn't. And then one of them was exceptionally.
Did you bang your knee in the pits at Ream?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I did. I had to jump over a wall because I had a wee that was so knocking on the door that I thought it was going to start drizzling out. So I scaled this wall, but I got the angle totally wrong and hit my kneecap square on the edge of the wall, to the point where I fell over the other side of the wall. And while I was weeing, I was crying. Yeah, that was so.
You know, I have various sort of low-level fears that I'm rightly mocked for, like a bird flying into my temple and puncturing my head. And
somebody actually
bending over near radiators. I have a real fear about bending over near radiators in case that the sharp edge of a radiator hits me in the eye.
What?
Don't know why.
Do you mean a household radiator?
Yeah.
Oh, so
a lot of radiators. And they're heavy and they're metal and unyielding. And if there's a pair of shoes, say, left by the radiator, as I bend down to pick them up, I take extra care.
Oh my gosh!
I don't want to bang my eye on a radiator.
I would worry more about leaning over the engine bay of an old car with the bonnet up and putting both hands onto the radiator, but forgetting that there's a driven fan behind it.
Oh God! And whilst wearing a necktie as well. That's always a classic way to get horribly hurt, isn't it? But
yes, it's a polyester kipper because I'm on my way to work in the 70s.
Yes.
And
one of my sort of just low-level fears is people who have forgotten that the car is still in gear and they've got their foot on the clutch and they absent-mindedly take their foot off the clutch. So you telling me that just confirms that I'm right to be worried about it. If I'm in the passenger seat of a car and we pull up and we stop, particularly if it's someone who I think is not a brilliant driver, I'll always absolutely double-check that they're in neutral or park before I get out. Because what is linked to this low-level fear is specifically getting out of a car and it's suddenly jerking and you get absolutely walloped by the door.
Well,
because I think it would hurt.
The bruise that occurred from that incident was so massive. It had a yellow outer ring. What's that planet that has rings? Is it Venus?
Saturn.
Okay, so it looked like Saturn. The outer ring was bright yellow. The inner ring was deep purple. And it almost looked fake. and it was so tender to the touch. Putting any kind of seatbelt on in a car was very difficult for a while. So there's that. But then, of course, there's the. I know we will come on to another letter in a sec. I'll wrap this up quick. The Dukes of Essex jump that I did, that I've talked about numerous times. That
yes, in the SAF.
It will be 20 years since I did that next year, 2025.
Ooh.
And weirdly, a friend of mine has just found that we thought was completely lost the original Rush's digital mini DV tape of all the camcorder footage we shot on that day. And and she also found the camera that it was shot on, so we plugged it in and put the tape in, and it still works. We have the footage, and this is an exclusive. I am going to do a director's cut of that for the Late Break Show. I don't know how interesting that is for people.
I've seen some footage of that, of you walking like a monkey for some reason.
Yeah, I try and do, you try and walk and get smaller and smaller for perspective to try and emphasise the perspective. That was my idea, but I just look like I'm walking in a special way.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, I've hurt myself. And I've been rear-ended in a Clio 182 trophy by a fully loaded Sprinter van once. And it pushed the rear beam right up into the inner wheel arches, so I had to drive it off the road with the rear wheels jammed. So it was like a dog with worms.
Jesus. Yeah.
Sad times. Yeah.
David Marden has a question for me from very leafy Portland, Oregon, he says.
Very leafy.
David's just watched a clip of Jeremy's very tall white motorhome being flung off a cliff while he's sitting in the foreground eating an ice cream. This is an old Top Gear film, the one where they built their own camper vans, motorhomes, whatever.
Yeah.
You remember Jeremy had that Citroen CX that had basically a sort of small tower block on it.
It was the Grand Designs one. I remember it was great.
That's right, yeah, and he had a little sort of feng shui, like a Japanese garden stuff in it. And James May had a sort of can't breathe laughing fit at watching it go down a dual carriageway wobbling.
That's
Apparently
right.
It was absolutely terrifying.
The side wind.
Yeah. So, David, his question is, I was wondering, how do you go about doing that? Do you get permits first, or is it something you try to do quickly, clear it up and run away? In that case, that land that we were on was private land, and it was owned by this maybe slightly eccentric posh bloke who didn't really care what we did, and that was how we got away with it. And obviously it was cleared up afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah,
which took days.
You do what you like because it's my land. I think a lot of the land along that coastline is owned, I think maybe by the National Trust and people like that, and they're quite particular about what people do on the land. And dropping a motorhome off a cliff would be not a popular thing. But this guy, who's like, this is my land, I can do what I want. So you do what you want. Which, again, we did one where we, again, a sort of a very lovely posh bloke let us film in the grounds of his massive house when we were doing, James and Jeremy went on a caravanning holiday when they were testing new SUVs. And they were racing each other, and the caravans got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really the plan. And a lot of bits of caravan ended up strewn across this man's garden, basically. And he was so nice about it, because our producer went and saw him, who was a great diplomat, and went, I'm so sorry, obviously this wasn't meant to happen. I do apologise. And this guy just went, oh, it's perfectly okay. We have a saying in our house, you make a mess, you clear it up. And so we went off and we cleared it up, and it was all fine. So yes, I'd say filming that show, a lot of the time the philosophy might have been better to seek forgiveness than to ask permission.
I agree. I tend to think that's a great idea. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I'm actually looking through some old emails, incredibly old, with like 2021 old.
Yes. I mean, our filing system is absolutely on point as always.
So we've got a chap called Jawad Siddiqui. This was sent in 2021. This letter, dear, just the start of it is great. Dear Johnny Alldays and Richard Onions, I hope you're very well. due to a recent desire to buy a Saab, I watched an old Top Gear clip where JC reviews the Saab 9.5 Aero, followed by a lovely TG feature of JC and JM going through the history of Saab. The following night, I had a dream that I owned a Saab. We've all been there. We've all been there. We've all been there. I dreamt that I had a Saab, reviving it as an EV brand. I launched 2 models, the 9-E, in brackets, Tesla Model 3 rival, and the 9-EX, in brackets, Tesla MY/Mach-E rival. Seems to me a Saab EV would be the perfect fit for the brand. I agree, and I know a lot of people have said, don't they wish that Polestar was sort of Saab? This got me thinking. From your perspective, if you were relaunching Saab as an EV brand, what would be their USP other than a night panel? As with JC in the aforementioned review of the 9.5, what would give their drivers the Saab smirk? Would love to hear your thoughts. Jawad, first of all, would you like to hear our thoughts some 3 years later? Because that's what you're going to get.
Yes. Well, Jawad, you've given up all hope on that question being answered, and out of left field, here we are.
This is it. So,
it's a good question.
It's a really good question.
What is the USP of any sort of new car company coming along? Because I think EVs have opened things up, and also the influx of new manufacturers we haven't really heard of or had before from China. But what's anyone's USP? How do you put a USP into a car? But I wonder with Saab, they could lean on that faux aircraft bollocks that they used for years.
Yeah.
It wasn't really true. Saab, the aircraft people, separate company.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, they were sort of doing the cockpit on a fighter jet and in the afternoon go, I've got to finish off the layout of the new 9.3.
No.
But leverage some of that the way they used to and go in hard on the cockpit style interior, by which I mean stand out by not putting everything onto a touchscreen.
Yes.
Say that's not how aircraft are. Important functions in aircraft are separated out and always easy to find in an emergency. You can't be dicking about in the cockpit of an aeroplane if you need to get something done with the autopilot.
Agreed.
So do that. I mean, it doesn't mean everything has to be buttons, because clearly it is perfectly okay to have. I saw someone the other day bitching about a car that's got the electric mirror controls on the touchscreen, and which is the same as my Tesla. The thing is, if it's your car, you adjust the mirrors once generally, and then they're there. And when my wife drives the car has her position memorised as well. It's not an issue. It's a real car journalist moan that, because it's like get into so many cars, I can't. They want to have a button, but I think certain things do and should have buttons, and Saab could really play up because we know about aircraft, we know how to prioritise controls and hierarchies of things.
Yes,
this is what we do better than anyone else.
Yeah, I've always liked the Saab windscreen shapes of the past. Ooh. Because they've gone with this sort of aeronautical shapes. So I think a USP for me would be something I always remember from an early age that Saabs they just had and were cool with, was wipers on the headlights. So yes. We're going to have LED lights, I guess, now, but I'd still like wipers, please. And they can be completely circular ones, like those porthole cleaners on ships that have to withstand storms, and obviously really good washers. But also, I'd still like the ignition switch key. I'd like a key in a hole, please, because Saab, they know that makes sense. So I'd still like a key in a hole in the centre console, please.
Really?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Because that's ambidextrous for left and right hand drive. It goes in the middle. Done.
But also, it can make a car feel a bit old-fashioned in a way, can't it? And I suppose if you want to sort of claim the white heat of technology, you'd go with a keyless solution.
But that would be Saab's USP. They'd go, we don't have to be at the rock face of technology, because what we've done is we've taken one step back and gone, that's the latest tech, but is it useful? And are you going to get annoyed with it in the next year of ownership? Are you going to go, I get it, it's new, but it's a bit shit.
Well, but again, not to wang on about my Tesla, but because that's on my phone is my key for that car. There is a card, but you can choose to have your phone as your key, and you just walk up to it, it unlocks, then you get in, and it's already, you put your foot on the brake, and it starts, and off you go. And when you're done, you just get out and fuck off, and it shuts down and locks automatically. And you just get used to that, and because it works very well, I've never had any issues with it. You just get used to that level of convenience / laziness. So I don't know, but I can see, yes, Saab selling themselves as user-friendly cars from Sweden would be a good selling point. They're unannoying cars. Everything is nicely laid out, easy to use. You don't have to have a PhD in computer programming to work out where the heated rear window is.
They'd also have the smallest badges on the front grille, or if they have a grille, or the front body and the rear. So very, very small. Very small.
Now, talking of Saabs, it sort of leads me, although it doesn't sound like it, to a question from Chris O'Brien, who, this question for me, he said, are there any other Stellantis tracks being worked on? He says, for some reason, the Boots Vouchers remix is a must in the playlist when I'm marking GCSE maths papers. So I think he's asking, am I procrastinating from work by writing bits of music on my laptop? Not really, because I have had quite a lot of actual work that needs doing. But this did remind me when I saw this question. Ages ago, I made up this song. I went to the pub in town one night with someone we know. And on the way home, I had a sort of slow trudge home uphill, and I saw 2 or 3 Saabs parked under lampposts, and I stopped to take photos of them. And it was when I got home, or the next morning, I was like, I didn't get in until about midnight, but we left the pub just before closing. So how did it take me so long to get home? And it's because I'd stopped to take pictures of Saabs.
You weirdo.
And then in my head, I made up this little song called We Are the Night Saabs. And it was about sad and lonely Saabs at night, having no dealer support.
What? How pissed were you?
I was a bit pissed. I wasn't like massively pissed, but I wasn't like singing it out loud. I was just sort of thinking of couldn't. And then the next day, I was dicking around, and I came up with this little sort of electronic tune, and I've never done anything with it. And I listened back to it quite recently and went, oh, actually, that's worth finishing, because I think the music's sort of quite decent for once. So maybe I'll do that. We Are the Night Saabs.
Well, I'm just going to do another quick letter from 2021.
Oh my God.
From a chap called James G. Evans. Hi, Johnny. Hey, guys. Saw this whilst driving around in San Diego. Just so funny for many reasons. Also, Opel Manta or Fold Capri. Not even a real question, just wanted to say folds. But I've seen. So he sent me 2 photos of it's a landscaper's pickup truck with sort of lockable bays on the back and lots of tubes with rakes and hoses in and stuff. But the name of the company on the door is called Le Perv Landscapes. Genuinely, I'll put this photo on for the patrons. It's just called Le Perv. The Perv Landscape. I don't get it. And
is it 2 separate words?
It's 2 separate words in really nice scripty, looks like the album cover of a Beach Boys thing. And then on the back it says leperv.com. So there's actually a website called Le Perv. The Perv Landscaping? Let's just look it up. I'm just going to check whether it's still legal tender.
Is there a question here?
No, that's not a question, is it? I just realised. I just thought it's really interesting.
So you just read out an email. Okay, I've got a question here.
It is Le Perv. I've looked it up. leperv.com. There we go.
.com. Good. Peter Brewser has a question for you. He says, over the past couple of years, I've noticed a potentially dangerous aspect to the Barn Find episodes posted by the one and only Johnny Smith. Oh. Has Johnny ever feared for his life when going for a butcher's hook over deceased spec 1972 Morris Marina, only to be lured by its super sexy cost-saving body accents whilst not paying attention to the decrepit shed door that was raised by a Grand's walking stick? Has there ever been a near decapitation from these old doors over the years? I fear for his life sometimes.
Well, we have had a door just fall off, yeah. that it was it was a heavy door as well, and it had pretty much rotted off at the top, but stayed on the bottom. So as we opened it, it did a sort of swing down and around, like a horizontal swing. So we had that, but the one where afterwards, I probably, as I was packing my tools away, I thought to myself, Johnny, you're a bit of an idiot. You should have had a hard hat on for this one. It's quite irresponsible of you. Was when the roof of the barn was totally collapsed in the middle, and we used a crane lorry to lift the roof up in order to get the car out. And I was in there, but the level of health and safety that I went to was I made sure that for most of the day I was crouching whilst talking so that my head was lower than the roof of the Sierra that I was talking about. Right. So that I thought if the roof comes down on the big old barn, it will hit the Sierra and not my head. At no point did I think, I should just go and get a hard hat for this one. So that wasn't the best moment for me. For me, is a nice.
For sure we push.
For sure we push. I do get slightly worried about. There's a lot of bad dust in some old buildings, I start coughing a bit sometimes. We have to cut the camera, and I have to go outside and drink lots of water and
have a big cough.
Yeah, and of course a lot of black bogies that the day after. Yeah, but barn-find bogies are a thing. BFB.
Are they really?
Yeah, they really are a thing.
Dust and fibrous shit.
Yeah, there is, and hopefully not asbestos. I do a scan for asbestos. Genuinely, I do a scan for that.
Yeah, I suppose, yes, old garages often riddled with the stuff.
Yeah. So,
yikes.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly, mate. Yeah.
I have a question here from Oscar Wheatley. He says, what is the best driving moment from being in the car with your parents? Mine is my dad chasing down absolutely any car down roads that he knew in a fully loaded transit van, with only the words that should come out of his mouth being "Backbone of Britain," referencing the Ford advert with the Queen soundtrack.
He was chanting "Backbone of Britain" as he was like.
Well, I think he said. So Oscar says that basically, whenever he sort of put it to his dad that they were in danger of tipping over, his dad would reply "Backbone of Britain" as if to say, "No, it's all good for it."
Hang on.
His question is, what's your best driving moment from being in the car with your parents?
Is his dad Tiff Nadell? I need to ask. It's the sort of thing I'd expect Tiff to just shout out casually as the car was going over.
Well, as I've said many times, when I was in a car with Tiff once and we went onto some grass on Campbell Airfield, and he just very calmly did go, "We're going to roll."
Oh, yeah, that was amazing.
Incredibly matter-of-fact situation. Like,
amazing.
No, wait, no.
I remember that one.
We didn't.
Well, so there's one that I can hear the engine in my head. We were going on holiday, and we were in the Hillman Avenger. Me and Greg were in the back. I would have been probably 10 years old. My parents were brilliant at overpacking for holidays. The Avenger was absolutely on its arse. It was on the bump stops at the back, and we knew this, and Dad knew this, and we had to climb one of those huge Devon hills to get to the sort of coast on the other side.
Yeah.
And I remember he took a run at the hill, because I remember him going a little bit hot to one of the lower corners because he knew he had to keep momentum up. And it was instantly from third to second bogged and bogged and bogged and bogged, and then it was double clutch into first. But the problem was he got to the end of first, but the car, he kept trying to go into second, and it would bog, and then he'd have to go back into first. So you needed an in-betweeny gear, but there wasn't one. And I remember the car was just screaming in first, and Greg and I were sort of flickering one eyelid, going, "Bloody hell, is this going to get him?" And Mum was going, "Bob, this doesn't sound right." And Dad was going, "It's fine." He'd say, "It's fine. We'll be at the top soon." And just keeping an eye on the temperature gauge. And sure enough, we did get there. But the poor car, I mean, we'd overpacked. We'd just so overpacked.
Yeah. Did I mention this the other day to you in real life? But when we went on holiday to Spain in the 80s, probably about 1987, and our hire car was a Seat Marbella.
Oh, I don't remember you mentioning a Marbella.
Yeah, it was the Marbella that grievously wounded me. Actually, this to the previous question about car-related injuries. The Marbella had for people who don't know, Marbella is the Mark I Panda, but adapted by Seat, and it had a canvas roof that sort of folded, like the leading edge and the trailing edge folded both towards the middle, and I think you were supposed to roll it and secure it.
That's right.
With a rubber strap.
Yes.
The rubber strap on the back bit had broken. It just perished in the heat. So they'd supplied, attached to where most of the rubber strap had disappeared, basically a big bit of bent wire to do the same job.
Oh, gosh.
At some point, the bent bit of wire we didn't notice had fallen off and dropped onto the back seat. And when we'd gone somewhere, when we went back to the car to get in it, me, as 11, 12-year-old, clambered into the back seat, put my palm onto the back seat to sort of steady myself to pivot round, sit down, and the wire punctured my wrist.
Really?
It was quite painful.
Oh, gosh, it was really sharp wire.
Yeah, one of those ones where you sort of go, and there's a wire poking out your wrist and you don't know what to do. And, yeah.
What did you do? It was the 80s, so what did you do?
Just had a big swig of lemon squash and then I was fine. No, I think there was a first aid kit or something in the car, right? Because my mum was a physio, so she was sort of, medically trained and very good in situations like that. She wasn't a panicker when there was blood, quite the opposite. So it was all under control. But I just remember that moment of going, there's a wire coming out my wrist. But the memorable moment was not that so much as when we were going up into the mountains. We were sort of on the Costa del Sol, but we were going up into the mountains for some reason. And there was this long, straight, but very steep, and there was a truck absolutely lumbering up it, and my dad decided to go for an overtake on this long straight. But the Marbella, with 4 people in it, didn't really have the guts to make this a snappy manoeuvre.
Oh, no.
And I remember there was a truck we could see coming downhill towards us. My dad was called Phil, and I just remember my mum going, "Phil?" in a sort of questioning, "Are you sure? Is this okay?" And we made the manoeuvre. But there was also, I could see a moment where I was thinking, my dad's going to back out of this. He's going to have to. But no, we just tucked in time. But it was a bit hairy. Again, same sort of thing where the engine is like, and nothing's happening. So that was, I would nominate that as one of my most memorable moments with my parents.
I remember someone going into the back of us in the same car in the Avenger in the town on a busy Saturday. And I think they'd not seen that the lights had changed, and they went in quite hot. I was in the back seat and getting smashed into, and then Dad just really casually getting out and going round. And there was a very small mark on the Avenger bumper, but because we had a tow bar, it just demolished the car that had gone into it. And Dad just kind of went, "That's why I always fit a tow bar to my vehicle." He said something like that. And I always remember, whenever we looked at second-hand cars thereafter, he would always go, "Great, it's got a tow bar, don't need to fit one." Even though he only towed like 2 things a year at the most. It was just one of those, a real dad thing. Totally dad.
Yeah, that's excellent dadding.
And I now say a car with a bar. That's my sort of dad phrase. Oh, look, a car with a bar.
It's got to be a car with a bar.
Car with a bar.
Saves a fortune on low-speed accident repairs.
Yes.
Right, well, this has been another On the Other Side of Things. Thank you for your questions, especially the ones from 3 years ago. Unexpectedly answered. If you have got a question for us, hello@smithandsniff.com is our email address, hello@smithandsniff.com. We do love answering questions, and we look forward to receiving more of them for next week. And we'll see you next Friday to answer some more things. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Seas, we are outsides. Saab 93, den svenska bilen med flygkvalitet. Saab kommer. Se på den nya hela vindrutan. Karossen är pressad av kraftig stålplåt och helt svetsad. Saab kommer. Se på den stilrena inredningen med höj- och sänkbart baksäte och på de bekväma stolarna och den välutrustade instrumentbrädan. Saab kommer. Se på underredsbehandlingen som sker direkt på fabriken. Saab kommer till er. Med den hela nya vindrutan. Ni kan också få den automatkoppling, alltså utan kopplingspedal. Och ni kan få den i flera läckra färger.